first of all, thank you for the invite. Well, I've been a programmer since I was 13 years old. Started using a Commodore 64, learning BASIC. That was, during the 80s, every computer came loaded with BASIC, so that's what got me started into programming. And then, well, I eventually went to college. I studied computer engineering. I'm Honduran. I'm originally from Honduras. And well, in Honduras, we don't have a game industry as such. I really love video games, but there was no way that I could get into video games unless I did it myself. So I kind of started investigating, reading a bit. There was no internet even during my when I was a teenager. But as I grew up, I just managed to land some jobs here and there. I started working at a bank, a local bank, and then because of a weird life opportunity, I ended up at the Inter-American Development Bank, working 10 years in the US. And then I had the opportunity to come to France to work at a company called Shift Technology, investigating insurance fraud. And then I had this weird change of careers because then I started working at Starbreeze after almost 1/4 of my life working at banks. Now I'm creating bank robbing simulations. If you know what I mean. First time working at a bank, now I'm robbing banks. So it's kind of cool. So yeah, that's what I've been doing the last years of my life, I guess.
And what motivated you to shift from working with banks to, game development? It sure sounds like one hell of a shift.
It's, it's a hell of a shift, yes. Uh, f- well, first of all, I always wanted to do video games, and I was doing video games in my spare time already. I managed to create with some friends. We created some mobile video games that they received like moderate to little success, and I was doing a lot of teaching as well, and I was teaching my students about game programming. So yeah, I was very familiar with all the technologies that game developers used. So well, once in when I was in the US, I was under a special work visa that only allowed me to work at international organizations. But here in France, I'm kind of free in the sense that I can go anywhere. Given that the company I mean, I can do professional work. That's what I mean. Engineering work. So that motivated me to do a shift. I said, why not give it a shot? Since I'm already here, there's a lot of game programming studios here. Why not give it a shot? I did. I gave it a shot, and that's how I landed at Starbreeze.
So let me get this straight. You was born in Honduras, then you lived in the US. Why Starbreeze?
Well, why Starbreeze? I applied to a lot of companies actually, but I just got 3 replies, and I thought that Starbreeze was the more interesting one. I obviously knew about the game. Actually, there's a fun fact. I've never before my interview. I've never played the game. I just knew it existed. So I woke up very early to just download the game and play it. And when I had my interview and they asked me, "Have you played the game?" I said, "Yeah, of course I have played it. Yeah, like 5 minutes ago." Eh, but it was weird because I actually enjoyed the game. It was I consider it to be a very cool game. Actually, after my interview, I kept on playing. So I received 3 offers, and I think Starbreeze was the most appealing and the most interesting one and most challenging one, I guess.
And what were your main responsibilities in Starbreeze?
Well, I was hired to be what I would call myself a computer archaeologist, basically to dig up Payday 2's engine. When I was hired, it was during the restructuring when Starbreeze was going through the restructuring because of Overkill, Walking Dead, and all that happened, everything that happened during that time. So it was decided to go full in with Payday 2 and eventually Payday 3. So we needed to add more content to Payday 2. So the problem is that most of the people, if not all of the people who had worked in the engine, were pretty much gone from the company. But when I joined Starbreeze, so I was in charge of the whole engine. I mean, to investigate how it worked and get familiar with it, and be the first call-to guy when someone needed or had a problem with the engine. Maybe the engine was misbehaving. Maybe the level developers wanted a new feature, or a feature that they were using was not working as expected. So I was the go-to guy for all those types of problems. That was my main job, let's say, for almost 3 years. Just breathing more life into the engine and to Payday 2 itself.
Uh, just to clarify, we're talking the diesel engine right now, not Unreal that
Yeah,
Payday.
diesel engine 2.0, the one that Payday 2 uses.
Besides the diesel engine, you were also working on the game's world editor. Could you please elaborate on what you were doing there? What were the improvements to this tool set that you implemented, and so on?
Oh yeah, yeah. So since we use a proprietary engine, it also comes with a level editor, and it's a very cool level editor. It's a different paradigm shift. Obviously, I cannot go into too much details, but just say that it's very cool. It's very intuitive for the level designers. They found it very intuitive. They started working very quickly and creating their own levels. Um, there were some things that were kind of missing from the engine. There were some bugs as well. It was a little bit overloaded as well, because I mean it has they have been working on it for creating levels for almost 10 years now. So it was a little bit overburdened, I could say. And I did a lot of work regarding optimization. Something for There was a problem with the cameras, I remember, that I had to fix as well. There was and I also helped with some visualizations to make it clear what they were doing, because sometimes, for example, uh, they could add, let's say, an interaction radius or a volume, but they couldn't see it. For example, they have to play the game and see how it works. So that sort of stuff, like aiding them, uh, to make trying to make their work easier for them. That's what I was doing through visualizations, showing more stuff, showing more information, adding additional features, optimizing the engine, and that sort of stuff. And obviously fixing bugs, bugs that they were reporting.
That goes without saying, I think,
Yeah, bugs, always,
but
always bugs.
when it comes to Payday titles.
Well, yeah, I think it's fair to say that all all games have bugs, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just messing around.
Nah, it's okay. I'm not ashamed to say that we shipped a product with bugs. Yeah, we all do.
And did you have to do any work with Payday 3? And in general, do you have any experience with Unreal Engine 4 and 5?
Well, I do have experience with Unreal Engine 4 and 5. I didn't get to work on Payday 3 just for 1 or 2 months, I think, because when we released the final level for Payday 2, I mean, everyone knows by now. I think it's it's just public information now that Payday 2, at least for the moment, will not receive any more updates unless there are bug fixes, I guess. And but I mean, I don't think that we're gonna see any more levels from Payday 2. So we work on the final levels, and we surely wanted to go with a blast. And I honestly think that the last levels from the last DLC of Payday 2, they were awesome. I think the soundtrack was awesome. I'm proud of what we did. I mean, I think we did a very good job. And well, to answer your question, sorry, I kind of got sidetracked. Uh, After that, yes, I was kind of floating in limbo. So since there's no more Payday 2, regard unless there were some quick bug fixes, I just spent like 2 months working on Payday 3, and just helping them practically implement some of the features and use some of the knowledge we gained from Payday 2, and to implement features on Payday 3. That was mostly what I did. I have a fun story about that. Uh, During Christmas vacations, I spent some time with some friends, and they have a 13-year-old kid who is obviously is a gamer. And he asked me, "Hey Julio, have you worked on Payday 2 and Payday 3?" I said, "Yeah, I'm just Payday 2. I just made one screen on Payday 3." And yeah, I just made one screen. And he asked me which screen is that is, and I said, well, it's a screen that shows you when the servers are down. And the kid just said, well, it's the screen that the people see the most, so you should be proud of yourself. And yeah, I took the jab with dignity. It was a very good jab. I accept it. Yeah, just one screen. Just one screen and a lot of just helping the team.
Thank you. That's a really good story. Uh, Besides the diesel engine, you also mentioned developing new weapon systems for Payday 2 and working on the game's physics. So my question is, could you tell us more about Diesel's capabilities when it comes to in-game physics, and how does this engine compare to maybe other engines, Unreal, Unity, and you name it?
Well, so what I did for the first part of your question, what I did for Payday 2 was implement some gun physics, which was meant to be just cosmetic. I mean, it shouldn't affect the world, so that's why I added as a special point in my bullet point in my resume. So what I did is, maybe you remember the charms that were released for Payday 2. I worked on the charms. They were meant just to be cosmetic, and also there was one weapon that have a machine gun bell, so when you fire it, it starts wiggling. Um, that I work on that as well. Using it was just fake physics, not real physics, because as I said, it was just meant to be cosmetic. And how the engine relates to other engines. Well, I think that Unreal Engine is a very powerful engine. I mean, it started as an engine for racing games, if I'm not mistaken. The first game, I forgot the name, but, but it was transformed into this thing that was more general, and now it has been more tailored specifically for shooter games. It does an amazing job at doing that. It's very efficient. It's very lightweight. I mean, you can run Diesel, you can run Payday 2 almost in every computer that has for the last from the last 10 years, I guess. And it's not the same with Unreal Engine. So it's very optimized. It's a very optimized engine. And unfortunately, as everything, it's getting a bit old. I mean, it could use some rework, some graphical rework, especially. And it was actually another good thing about Diesel. It is still a multi-platform engine. You can release the code base. Sorry, you can use the code base and release the game for PlayStation, for computers, for Xbox, and all the stuff. And so yeah, it's a great engine.
Besides working on the engine, your portfolio also mentions that you did some work on Payday 2's VR version. So was it your first experience working on a virtual reality title?
It was my first experience, commercial experience. Yes, I mean, I have used it just for investigation, for learning purposes, and I have given some talks about it. But yeah, it was my first commercial experience. And yes, unfortunately, every time we did a major change to the diesel engine or the game, we had to always check that if we didn't break something in VR, which some of the times, sometimes we did, to be honest. And it's weird because although we didn't have so many players using the VR version, the players just loved it. I mean, I've used it, I played it, and I think it's a very good implementation. I don't know if you tried it yourself, but I still think that it's one of the best implementations of a shooter game in VR. And well, it's a shame it didn't. It's a shame for me that VR in itself didn't get as much traction as everyone expected, because it's a great experience. I mean, just having your waving your hand and looking at the weapon and expecting it at all angles is just a beautiful experience. And yeah, so I worked on it, and every time, as I told you, every time we tweaked the cell, probably we broke something on VR, so we had to double check. And I was such a big mouth back then because I mentioned that I had a VR set, so every time we needed something for VR, say, "Oh, Julio has a VR set. Let him test it." So yeah, I opened my big mouth.
Uh, I honestly think that had this VR mode been released nowadays and not during this VR craze of the late 2010s, it would have been a success.
Yeah, I still think that maybe some VR experiences just were released not in the right time, in the right date, if you know what I mean.
I and development wise, are there any particular differences between working on a regular game and on a VR title?
Yeah, yes. For example, in when you are working on a VR title, you have to take in consideration motion sickness because it is real. I mean, if you are using a VR headset, you will get motion sickness. So you cannot move like you move in a regular game because you will get dizzy because the thing is that your senses are not in agreement. I mean, you're moving inside your VR world, but you are not moving physically. So your body has this cognitive dissonance among your senses about what is really going on. So, for example, when you use a VR game, you do not walk as you would walk in a real game, you teleport because when you look for a location, you usually have like a blue circle that you move out, you place around the world. You aim for it, you press a button, and then you teleport. And just for 1 second, you close the you like close the shutter off. You do a fade out and a quick fade in, and then you are teleported, and that removes the motion sickness. Or if you're unfortunately, if you are driving a space shuttle or driving a car, what the other technique that it is used is that you close your angle of vision, your field of vision. You close it just instead of looking at the whole screen, you just close it so you can focus just on one, just straightforward. So you cancel your lateral vision to avoid motion sickness. And yeah, those are just two techniques that you need to take into consideration. And and obviously the fact that you can move your hands freely. That's the other thing that you have to consider.
Besides Payday 2, you also worked on Project Baxter before you left
Uh,
Starbreeze.
yes.
So could you please tell us, without, breaking your NDAs and stuff, something about the game? What stage of development is it on right now? What engine it uses, and so forth?
Okay. So Project Baxter. I think it's safe by now to. I think it has been already said that it's gonna be in Unreal Engine 5. I'm not sure the minor version. Um, it might be have been upgraded. I don't know, but 5.2, I think it was for the one that we were using. It might be have been upgraded, but it's gonna be definitely Unreal Engine 5. It's a Dungeons and Dragons game. Sorry, I need to say that again. Dungeons and Dragons game. And what I can say is that it's promising. It's one. If I could describe Project Baxter with one word, is promising. I know that, I read the comments. I mean, I've seen the videos, and I know that many people are pre-hating the game. And I just want to tell those people, just give it a chance, okay? Just wait for it to come out, give it a try, and after that, you can make an informed decision. But I can say that the people that are working on that project, they are amazing people. They're giving their 100% for that project. It's looking very promising. I myself, I'm gonna play it. I'm when the as it is when it is released, I'll definitely gonna play, and then I will give my informed decision, and I will be honest about it. If it's a good game, I'll play it. If it's a bad game, I'll just say that it sucks. That's how it goes. Now I'm I'm no longer an employee, but I'm still a gamer, so I can give an informed decision. But I said that it's promising, so I will give it a try. And if I'm willing to give it a try, I think that speaks a lot about the project.
How would you say the entire game industry has changed? I don't know, let's take 2015. How would you say the gaming industry has changed over the past 10 years or so, for the better and for the worse?
Oh yeah, I I could even go 20 or 30 years back in
Yeah,
time.
well,
But
please
yeah,
do.
sorry.
Please do. Would be happy to hear that.
So my first ever game that I saw was Combat for Atari. I was just blown away. I mean, you have the TV. I mean, we already had TVs. We had color TVs, but I have never seen something that you could actually control on the TV. That first time I saw that it was a life changing experience for me was the Atari and Combat, and I say, oh my God, when I grow old, I want to do this stuff. And I'm happy to say that I did. I actually managed to create a copy of Combat in Atari, so just to scratch it off my list. And well, that's the earliest games. You have to lend the game a little of your imagination because of the graphic limitations that they have. And that's the thing that that's one of the things that happened when with the first generation of video games is that they had so many limitations, the programmer, that they have to work around those limitations, and they still managed to give us these amazing games. I have nothing but respect for those people. And continuing on, when we let's say games that people are more familiar now, let's say 10 or 20 years ago, how the industry has changed. Well, there were no engines available. Uh, there were a few, but they were not that good. And there were some commercial engines like Renderware. I remember having a telephone call with them, and they told me that the cheapest version of their license, sorry, of their engine was $40,000 for a single seat, something like that. So yeah, so if you want to create games, you had to create your own engine. So it was crazy. I mean, you will spend like 2 years creating your engine and another 3 4 years creating your game, and it was prohibitive. So definitely there were no indie developers that I can say. I mean, there were some indie games, but they were not they didn't have the same quality as many of today's indie projects. I think that the real game changer was when these engines like Unity, like Unreal, or even some of the other engines like Corona SDK, like Godot Engine, Game Maker, when they become available, they opened the doors to a wave of indie developers. And now everyone could create their own games, even for fun or for hobby or for commercial purposes. And that happened we're talking about 2012 or something like that, like 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago, it was like the opening, like the democratization of the game engines. They were finally available to the public. The public could afford the engines, and that it goes. The same could be said for the 3D uh, 3D tools. For example, 3D Studio was like ridiculously expensive. Same for Maya, and we didn't have Blender. Now we have Blender that can do almost everything that you can do in those other commercial projects, and even those projects they are affordable right now. So yeah, I think that would be my main point. That 10 years ago, it was the opening of the democratization of the game engines that was a big game changer, and well, indie games started to appear everywhere, and some very good. I might add.
Oh, what's your favorite game, by the way?
Oh, that's a very good question. My favorite game. I think it depends on the age. On It's a question about ages, I guess. Um, Well, in order to determine what is my favorite game, I think I relate to the experience or about how happy I felt when I was playing that specific game. So I will definitely point out to one of the classic games by LucasArts, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. That's from the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And I really have to point out Heavy Rain by Quantic Dream, one of my favorite games of all time. And even this game was published by Starbreeze and developed by Starbreeze, but it it was it was conceived by the guy who is now the head of Hazelight Studios. It's Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which is a very short game, but I really loved it. I think that those are like the three games I the look up the most to.
Thank you. And my final question is, now that you are no longer a part of the Starbreeze team, what's your, well, future plans? Do you plan to join some other studio or go back to banks and software engineering for financial institutions or do something else entirely? Like this one guy who left Microsoft to become a goose farmer.
Okay, I would rather be a goose farmer than return to a bank. That I can tell you. That I can definitely promise you. I'm not ever, 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 ever going to a bank. Yes, I have to. I'm still doing some soul searching regarding that. Yeah, I might. I think I might want to two options basically. Continuing with games, three options. I said continuing with games. It's an option. I have to be honest about it. Maybe something scientific that will actually be something that I will look forward to. And the third part is something that I've been doing a lot for the most part of my life is actually teaching people to do stuff. So yeah, for example, right now I'm working on a personal project. I'm working on it's crazy, I know, but I'm working on a course for programming the original Game Boy. I don't, oh, it's disappearing. Original Game Boy, and it's about to. I'm just a few videos short of releasing it, and I'm just we'll go through all the basics of how to program a, a video game console that is like 30 years old. Stuff like that that I really enjoy doing. It. So yeah, teaching games or scientific. That's my. I think that will be what I will be doing during the next years of my life.
And
Teaching definitely.
where do you teach? Is it some kind of university or online courses or?
I'm creating a online course. I give talks for universities when I'm invited to. Mostly in Guatemala and Honduras. I'm from Honduras originally, and well, I would like to do that in France as well, but my French is not the best. So as soon as I improve, I guess I'll start doing it here as well.